So this is a topic I wanted to talk about for a little bit now. I held off on this topic for little while because there were other important topics I wanted to talk about, like Bobby Kotick finally stepping down and retiring at the end of 2023. And we got a lot of Call of Duty news, which a lot of people aren't happy with the next Call of Duty and everything. And I wanted to get those topics out. So I figured this would be the perfect opportunity to talk about where game preservation finally stands in all this, because it seems like not a lot of people are happy with all the newer titles and everything, and modern gaming is still ruining the fun for the game industry and all that stuff. It just seems like more people are going towards the older titles again from what I'm aware of, and it seems like more people are going back to like games like Call of Duty Black Ops 2 or games like Diablo 3 for example, because the newer Call of Duties just freaking suck now, like Modern Warfare 2 reboot. No, nobody likes that game. It's just pretty much a microtransaction store. And games like Diablo 4, where the game just gets worse with every single update, and people are starting to go back to Diablo 3, even though that was a hit or miss with some people, but at least that game had more fun than Diablo 4 does. Now, I want to try to shift gears here for now. I don't want to say I want to change the subject and all, because I'm still talking about game preservation and I still want to talk about that. But I want to try to shift gears here from this point on until the end of the video, because I feel like this is the major elephant in the room that's not being addressed. If people want to try to go back to their older titles and play some of the more classic games that way and actually get a better experience, then I'm pretty sure a good portion of people out there watching this video or just play video games on a daily basis or so, I'm pretty sure a good portion of people got their games physically. And I know there's a good handful of people that also get their games digitally that also saves them the hassle, which I'm going to talk about later in the video. But it just seems like if you want to go back and have fun on the older titles again, you would have to get like either a physical copy or you would try to get it digitally on like an older console. But even then, like the older consoles are starting to lose their servers and everything. A good example, Nintendo just shut down the 3DS stores so people can't buy any more games digitally. Nintendo just recently shut the 3DS stores down, so you can't really get any games digitally anymore. So all those games on that store are pretty much gone in the void and they're just dead. So it just doesn't seem like you can get access to those games anymore. And it kind of worries me going forward with digital distribution being handled and everything, because it feels like if you have a physical copy of the game, it, in my opinion, it feels like the more safer option. It feels like you actually have the game there and everything, and you can just play the game right then and there. You could make an argument and say that you have to like install the game and like try to get all that updated stuff and everything in there. And to a certain degree, you're right. You do need to install like all the updates and everything, but a 90% of the time that you have a physical copy of the game, it's usually on there. Okay, so I guess I have to talk about this for a second. So, a few days ago, I just got Luigi's Mansion 3, and I actually beat that game in 8 hours, and I actually was able to beat it in just in like one sitting, but besides from that, I am digressing. The point is, I was able to get my hands on a physical copy of Luigi's Mansion 3, and I was able to either install all the other updates for the game, or I could just play the game right then and there. You know how you like load a cartridge into the game for the first time or a disc into the game, it usually prompts up like, oh, hey, you need to install all the updates to get access to the latest version of the game. But I was able to just play the game right then and there without installing all the updates, and I was able to enjoy the game for what it was worth. And yes, I did install all the updates after I beat the game and everything for Luigi's Mansion 3. But again, I digress. But the whole thing that's starting to worry me is just it just seems like physical media is starting to die out. And I've been hearing a lot of rumors and reports that a good chunk of the game is not usually on the disc anymore because people are just either downloading the game from the digital stores instead, or they just wait until all the patches are out and everything. It just seems like more people are getting their games digitally instead of getting them physically now, which is more convenient and more easier for people. Because why would you go out to a store and get your games physically when you can just install it on your console right then and there to save yourself some time and save yourself some effort? Now, if it was like a rainy day or if it was like a blizzard storm or something like that, like it's snowing really hard outside, I would understand that, you want to try to be a little safe and get the game from home. And if you have some leftover like Nintendo's cash or PlayStation cash or whatever, you could get the game then and there from home on your console, which again, I understand that. But I think a good portion of people like myself would rather get their games physically to feel like we secured that game in a way because we have the game, the base game on there, and of course, if we want all the patches and everything, we have to install all the patches onto the physical disc and everything. I'm probably overcomplicating this topic, but this is the most accurate conclusion I can draw out here, which leads into my biggest worry that I have for a lot of people out there. If you want to get your games digitally or try to install a game digitally at some point in the future, what happens if the servers shut down? You won't be able to get access to those games. Now, let me just say this as an example, and let me give you an example here. Let's say if you're playing on your Xbox 360, right? And you want to play Call of Duty World at War, but you don't have a physical copy and you want to try to get it digitally. If you try to go to the Xbox Marketplace, but the servers aren't working because no one really goes on the older titles anymore because let's say Microsoft shuts it down because they want people to move on to the next generation of consoles. You won't be able to get access to those games. If they shut down the marketplace for the Xbox 360, and if you want to buy like Call of Duty World at War for the Xbox 360, you won't be able to get access to buying that game. Let me just bring up another example. If you're playing on Nintendo Switch, right? And let's just say you want to uninstall, let's say, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and you have that game digitally, and you wanted to make room for, let's say, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. You get that game, you beat that game, and you want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 again. And let's just say if you try to reinstall Xenoblade Chronicles 3 by going to the Nintendo eShop, and God forbid, if Nintendo shuts down the servers for the Nintendo Switch, how will you be able to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 then? It This is my concern with digital distribution. Like, if the servers go down, you won't be able to get access to your digital library of games, even though you bought the games digitally. It just seems like you're not buying the game itself, you're just buying a temporary license, it seems like. And if you try to reinstall a game in the future, like again, like I just said, if you want to play Xenoblade Chronicles 3 and you want to reinstall it, and you have to go to the Nintendo eShop and reinstall it from there. Again, what happens if the Nintendo servers shut down for the eShop for the Nintendo Switch? What happens if the servers shut down there? You won't be able to reinstall that game. So it just seems like game preservation is dying right now. And it just doesn't seem like there's an easy way out. And a lot of people are getting their games digitally rather than physically. Now, look, I don't want to say digital only is a horrible thing and everything, because it can have some benefits, you know? It makes life easier for a lot of people. If you can't get access to a physical copy of, let's just say, if you want to get the newest Super Mario game, Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and there are no physical copies available, you can get it digitally, and you could save yourself the hassle that way. But if the servers are not working properly, you could get the game physically and go to a store and guarantee yourself that you have that game right then and there. But again, it feels like just a yin and yang kind of situation here, where there's a positive and a negative to having physical media and digital media. But more people are leaning towards digital media instead, because you can just stream the games, you can just like download the games on a platform of your choice. It's just more easier. And a lot of people are just avoiding physical media, it seems like. For the physical media side, when it comes to the game industry, it just seems like physical media is dying out and more people are just leaning towards a digital only future. And that is the direction that we're all heading in right now, with a PS5 that has a physical slot and one that has a digital only console. And we have an Xbox Series X or S. One of them has a physical copy slot and the other is just digital only. We're just heading into a digital only future where game preservation is just going to be erased from existence. Now, again, for the physical media side, when it comes to the game industry, physical media desperately needs to make a comeback here. Because if it's not for physical media in terms of like getting your games out there on the disc, we wouldn't be in the current situation that we are in today. Because again, it feels like if you have a physical copy of the game, it feels like you actually secured that game and you actually have a guaranteed spot for your game on that console, it feels like. It just feels like the more safer option. But then again, if you have a digital only PS5 or a digital only Xbox and you get all your games digitally, what happens if the servers shut down for that platform in the future? All those games you bought digitally that were connected to that online server, they're going to cease to exist and you won't be able to get access to that library. And you won't be able to get access to all those games you bought digitally. And again, it's the same concern with all the other games going forward. What happens if the servers shut down? And if you bought the game digitally, you will not be able to get access to that game or those games that you purchased for that certain platform. So, game preservation is starting to die. And that seems to be the main goal that these game companies are trying to achieve. And it seems like companies like Nintendo or companies like Activision Blizzard, for example, are just trying to eradicate game preservation from existence. I mean, Nintendo does it all the time. They absolutely hate it when people try to either emulate their games or try to make fan made servers for their games that a lot of people love. And it's very unfortunate because there's a lot of passionate people out there that play video games. They make fan-made servers or safe, secure, modded servers for people to just play their games on. But if companies like Nintendo or if other companies like Activision Blizzard try to shut down those servers, like Black Ops 2 Plutonium, or like a fan-made modded server on Pokemon Sword and Shield, for example, then those games are just gonna be gone because no one wants to play on like the base game if it's going to be riddled with hackers or cheaters or if they're going to have problems. And of course, it's up to the fans to preserve these games because if it weren't for dedicated fans of like Black Ops 2, we wouldn't have Plutonium, which is a safe modded slash safe secure platform that lets us play the older Call of Duty titles like Black Ops 2. If it weren't for Plutonium, Black Ops 2 would not be around to this day because there's dedicated fans and passionate fans that made these classic servers or mods to keep the game running up and safe on a secure server. But of course, companies like Nintendo and companies like Activision Blizzard, they hate that. They hate the fact that fans are trying to preserve their titles and they want people to move on to the newer titles that nobody likes in the first place. Now, to be fair, Nintendo does put out some banger AAA titles like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, but I'm more talking about games like Call of Duty and games like Diablo 4, and I'm talking about crappier games like that, for example. But then again, at the end of the day, these companies just don't give a shit about game preservation and they're just trying to erase it from existence. And so far, they're achieving that goal. And it's just going to continue to make me worried about the future going forward for the game industry. I know I sound like an old man just making this video, but this is something I started to notice a little bit going forward, and I'm starting to get a little bit worried. So, with that being said, thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I know this was a bit of a spicy video, but feel free to take it however you want. I am personally just worried about the future of the game industry going forward, especially when it comes to game preservation and everything. So, with that being said, thank you everyone for watching and for listening. I apologize for rambling. And until next time, I'm talking about the future for the game industry, and I'm talking about my worries about game preservation. And I'll see you all later.